Very good evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. This is News First, where the people come first. I'm Mariam Gunavijaya. We start off with a look at your headlines.
Only a rupee profit per litre of diesel, Minister Kanchana reveals to Parliament. Farmers demand a proper price for paddy. Minister says no funds to purchase paddy. Former President joins farmers in demand for just price for paddy. Former COPE Chairman Charita Herath, former COPA Chairman Professor Tissa Vitarana removed. GL warns of consequences if Geneva resolution is adopted. Central Hills battered by heavy rains. Woman dies after being buried under a mound of earth. Tambutegama hero cop rewarded with a promotion to sub-inspector.
On to your stories in detail. Professor Charita Herath is no longer the chairman of the parliamentary watchdog COPE. At the same time, former chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts, Professor Tissa Vitarana, has also been removed from the post.
The Committee on Public Enterprises, commonly known as COPE, ceased to function when the President decided to prorogue Parliament on the 28th of July 2022. COPE, led by Professor Charita Herath, was already digging deep into multiple government transactions and produced 3 key reports to the Parliament. During the same period, COPE produced 12 special investigation reports on individual investigations into government enterprises including Sri Lanka Cricket, Sri Lankan Airlines, Litrogas and the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. At the time when Parliament was prorogued, COPE had already decided to investigate the reasons for Sri Lanka's economic collapse from 2018 to 2022 and the transactions surrounding the Ceylon Electricity Board. Professor Charita Herath had left the ruling faction to become an independent MP with the opposition, and this time around his name was not proposed to COPE from the ruling faction nor the opposition. Sri Lanka's Parliament Speaker announced the 17 members who would represent the government in COPE. They are Jagat Pushkumara, Janaka Vakkumura, Lohan Ratwatta, Indika Anuruddha Herath, D.V. Chanaka, Shanta Bandara, Mahindananda Alutkamage, Rohita Begunwadana, Nima Lanza, S.M.M. Musharraf, Sanjeeva Edirimana, Jagat Kumara Sumitra Rachi, Premanatsi Dolavatta, Upul Mahendra Rajapaksa, Rajika Vikramasinghe, Madhura Vitanage and Professor Ranjit Bandara. The opposition is only represented by 10 members of parliament, and they are Andra Kumara Disanayaka, Rauf Hakim, Partli Champika Ranawaka, Dr. Harsha De Silva, Eran Wickramaratne, Nalin Bandara Jayamaha, S.M. Marika, Mujibur Rahman, Rohini Kumari Vijayaratne, and Shanakyan Rasamanikam.
Our investigations were troublesome for some people. Those who looted money as well as made the wrong economic decisions may be in danger. It reached a level where they worked to completely remove me from COPE. This is something new. The United Nations Human Rights Council has termed some events as economic crimes. The most senior members in Parliament are the President and Prime Minister. I am disappointed that such 2 members have been appointed as President and Prime Minister.
Interestingly, Professor Charita Herath, who was removed from COPE, is a member of COPA, the Committee on Public Accounts. Former COPA Chairman Tissa Vitarana has been removed from the Committee on Public Enterprises. The ruling faction had nominated 12 MPs to COPA, and they are Mohan Priyadarshana De Silva, Lasantha Alagiyawanna, K. Kadamastan, Dr. Suren Raghavan, Diana Gamage, S.B. Disanayaka, Dr. Sarath Veerasekara, Vimalavira Disanayaka, Dr. Major Pradeep Undugoda, Isuru Dodangoda, Sahan Pradeep Vitana, and D. Veerasinghe. 15 MPs represent the Samagijana Balavegaya and the independent MPs in the opposition. They are Tissa Attanayaka, Kabir Hashim, Niroshan Pereira, Dr. Mrs. Sudarshani Fernand Pulle, J.C. Alavatuwala, Ashoka Besinghe, Buddhika Patirna, Jayanta Samaravira, Hector Appuhami, Hesha Vitanage, Vasanta Yapa Bandara, Shanakyan Rasamanikam, Veera Sumana Veerasinghe, Professor Charita Herath, and Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
The Fuel Distributors Association says it will step away from placing orders for fuel from 8 a.m. on Tuesday. This is in protest against the decision taken by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to recover the 45% discounts awarded to fuel distributors. Secretary of the association, Kapila Nautanna, says they will refrain from placing orders against this move. And the Private Tank Owners Association says it will only deliver fuel stocks that have already been ordered. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, on Monday revealed to Parliament that the price of diesel was not reduced during the recent fuel price revision, as only a profit of ₹1 was being made per litre.
දැන් මේ බොරතෙල් මිල අඩු වෙනකොට පෙට්‍රල් විතරක් අඩු වෙන්න බෑනේ ඩීසලුත් අඩු වෙන්න ඕන. පහුගිය සතිය වෙනකොට ඩීසල්
When we compare our import prices with the Singapore average price, we are making a loss of 30 rupees per litre of diesel. However, when we revised the prices, there was no loss. We have started making a profit of ₹1 per litre of diesel. However, we cannot drop prices by more than 10 rupees. If we do that, we will not have money to purchase fuel for future needs. We were able to reduce the price of petrol because we were making a profit of 70 rupees per litre. In another fortnight, we will be able to make a new price revision. We cannot decide fuel prices on crude oil prices alone. This is because we are not meeting all our requirements via the refinery.
පමණක් අපේ ඉන්ධන මිල තීන්දුව කරන්න බෑ මොකද අපේ සම්පූර්ණ අවශ්‍යතාවය අපේ පිරිපහදුවෙන් අපි පිරිමහ ගන්න නැති නිසා. දැන් අද වෙනකොට දැන් බොර
Crude oil prices have dropped, but kerosene production has also dropped. Why is this benefit not passed on to the low-income earners, the estate communities and the fisher folk?
පිරිපහදුවෙන් නිෂ්පාදනය කරන භූමි තෙල් වල
The production cost per litre of kerosene at the refinery is 370 rupees and 62 cents. We are selling a litre for 340 rupees. We are losing 30 rupees and 62 cents per litre daily. As the Ministry of Power and Energy, we have no way of providing relief. However, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Fisheries must step forward to introduce a concession scheme. We propose to implement these programs targeting the low-income earner. This is not something the Ministry of Power and Energy can do.
කරන්න කියලා ඒක අපේ විදුලි බල බලශක්ති අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් කළ හැකි කාරණාවක් නෙවෙයි.
මම අහන්න කැමතියි ඇයි මේ ඩීසල් මිල අඩු කරන්න බැරි වෙන්නේ කියන එක.
ඩීසල් මිල අඩු කරනවා.
As the Minister of Power and Energy, we cannot reduce diesel prices or provide concessions. The Finance Ministry and the Treasury must make considerable investments for us to do so.
ජනය කළ යුතුයි ඒ සහනාධාරය ලබා දීම සඳහා.
Sri Lankan farmers were among the worst affected segments of the Sri Lankan fabric due to the fuel crisis and in the absence of diesel or kerosene concessions. These farmers decided to step out and elaborate on their plight. One of the main issues faced by the Sri Lankan farmers is that they are not provided with a reasonable price for the paddy harvest from the yellow season.
They want 90 rupees for raw paddy and 110 for dried paddy, yet the prices are ranging from 35 to 40 rupees. The private traders take away the produce for a very cheap price. The paddy price is not sufficient. The control price is for the government. However, private traders are purchasing paddy for a cheap price. We have already lost the jewellery we pawned. The paddy storage facilities have been closed down as well.
As there is no proper price for the paddy harvest, the farmers are left helpless.
A farmer who works on another field settles dues with 18 bushels. That was when agriculture was booming. Following the ban on chemical fertilizer imports, the income of local farmers dropped by 50%. Given this situation, how can the farmers who work in other fields make payments with 18 bushels? This has put farmers at risk. We are requesting assistance to solve this issue.
Farmers from Anuradhapura claim they are not prepared for the Maha season.
We cannot cultivate based on quota systems. The minister needs to understand that the president must make a statement on how much of urea fertilizer was given to the farmers from the shipment of 65,000 metric tons that was imported. The President must address the nation and say the fertilizer will be provided for the farmers. The President must take a proper decision. If not, we will not listen to anyone.
The National Farmers Conference said farmers are not prepared to accept organic fertilizer of inferior standards.
These are compost that they provided, and it is a mixture of two types of mud and soil. This is not fertilizer that will benefit the growth of paddy. If organic fertilizer is provided to the farmers, there needs to be a proper standard. Every person that tried to mess with the farmers faced the consequences. That is what happened to Gotabe as well. So Ranil and Mahinda Amaravira should not play around with the farmers. The farmers are not puppets. Do not force us to the streets. We do not need 225 MPs who cannot solve the farmers' issues.
Former Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena joined a farmers' protest to demand a proper price for the Yala season paddy harvest and fertilizer for the Maha season cultivation. The protest took place at the Polonnaruwa town on Monday.
The government and the private mill owners are not purchasing paddy. The farmers cannot bear this. In addition, farmers are not willing to sell for low prices. Instead, paddy is stored in their homes.
Now, the plight of farmers was also discussed in Parliament on Monday.
Large and small scale mill owners are not purchasing paddy. That is why the price has fallen in some places. The Paddy Marketing Board has purchased over 8,000 million kilos of paddy. However, due to the lack of funds, we cannot proceed with the procurement process. We hope funds will be released following the cabinet meeting. If we are able to access the funds, we will be able to purchase paddy at a higher price. Earlier you said that the farmers with less than 1 acre of paddy land will be given free fertilizer for the Maha season. Has that decision changed? What we meant was less than an hectare. Earlier it was proposed for farmers with less than an acre of paddy land. Now we are prepared to go even beyond that amount. IFCO has agreed to provide 800 metric tons in 3 weeks. We will distribute it accordingly.
Sri Lanka has been categorized as a FAO-WFP hunger hotspot or a major food crisis by the UN Global Report on Food Crisis. This was revealed in a recent statement by the International Monetary Fund.
Lanka is among the 48 countries designated as hunger hotspots that are considered as countries highly exposed to food insecurity. The other countries include a series of nations in the African continent. Food insecurity has been rising since 2018, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The increasing frequency and severity of climate shocks, regional conflicts and the pandemic were all taking their toll, disrupting food production and distribution and driving up the cost of feeding people and families. The situation took an even more dramatic turn with the war in Ukraine. This pushed the prices of food and fertilizer higher, still hurting importers and prompting several countries to impose export restrictions like in Sri Lanka. According to the International Monetary Fund, the result is an unprecedented 345 million people whose lives and livelihoods are in an immediate danger for acute food insecurity. And the World Food Programme says that around the globe, more than 828 million people go to bed hungry every night. The impact of the food shock is felt everywhere. The suffering is worst in 48 countries, many highly dependent on imports from Ukraine and Russia, mostly low-income countries. Of those, about half are especially vulnerable due to severe economic challenges, weak institutions and fragility. In many places, even though food prices have eased somewhere from recent peaks, still high food and energy prices have fueled a cost of living crisis that is likely to increase poverty and hurt growth, potentially fueling political instability. The IMF says that for this year alone, it estimates that highly exposed countries need as much as $7 billion to help the poorest households cope.
Asia's highest inflation rates and ongoing fuel scarcity continue to threaten food security in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka continues to experience an unprecedented economic crisis with high inflation, rising commodity prices, power shortages and scarcity of fuel. The World Food Programme said that Asia's highest inflation rates and ongoing fuel scarcity continue to threaten food security in Sri Lanka. According to the WFP, an estimated 6.2 million people in Sri Lanka are facing moderate to severe acute food insecurity, with 1 in every 4 households applying negative coping strategies such as reducing the number of meals per day and reducing expenses on other essential things such as healthcare or withdrawing children from school. Female-headed households are seen to be particularly hard hit, as are the urban poor and the people working in the estate sector. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said that given the deteriorating food security and nutrition situation in Sri Lanka and the strong likelihood that the upcoming Maha season will not produce sufficient yields, several countries have pledged further assistance, especially towards improving food security and the critical inputs for the agriculture sector. The United States Agency for International Development, or the USAID, announced an additional $20 million in humanitarian assistance, bringing USAID's total assistance to nearly $92 million since June of this year. The United Kingdom pledged £3 million in life-saving support, going mostly towards food security and supporting farmers, while the EU released €1.5 million in humanitarian aid, which will mainly be utilized for multi-purpose cash assistance. The final agreement on the $2.9 billion extended fund facility from the International Monetary Fund is still pending, subject to the approval by the IMF management and the Executive Board. The Committee on Public Finance raised concerns with the chairman of the Board of Investment on a request made to provide a tax holiday to a company for 12 years. Due to the failure of the Board of Investment to provide a sufficient response, the committee chairman, Dr. Harsha De Silva, expressed his displeasure and said that he could not approve it at this time.
I'm unable to answer that question. It's a good question, I understand that. But however, I want to say...
We will not do this. I am going to put my foot down. Hereafter, don't come here if you don't know the answer to a simple question.
Well, I think if it is a
Mr. Chairman, let me, I'm speaking. You are asking for a tax break, no?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
You are asking for a 12-year tax break for a particular company. You are trying to justify saying that it has global clients, it is stock market, it is in the stock market, all of that. All that is granted. Please try to understand our predicament. The Public Finance Committee's job is to actually get an analytical clarification from you. We are asking a simple question. What is the foregone tax? So if you don't know what the foregone tax is, how do you expect us to give you this?
News First with the people.
We are crossing over to a short commercial break. Stay with News First. We will be right back.
News First, main sponsor.
Lanka eke arakshita iti gini petti. Surya gini petti. Lovatama eliya denna dilena Surya. Amataka vinnema nati namage Surya. Mohotin dalvena gini kura Surya. Kavadat namagat gini petti Surya. Kavadat namagat gini petti Surya. Kavadat kotanat samage vishwase dinagat. Anka eke arakshita iti gini petti. Surya gini petti.
A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD, 25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD, the symbol of stability.
You're watching Primetime News on News First. Moving on. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has assured the EU's support to the government of Sri Lanka for the efforts to overcome the country's crisis successfully. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, noted that at a time of unprecedented challenges faced by the people of Sri Lanka, the European Union remains committed to support Sri Lanka's efforts to overcome the crisis successfully, including the necessary reforms that will bring the country back to a path of inclusive prosperity and lasting national reconciliation. She further stated that in this process, freedom of expression and assembly, dialogue among all stakeholders, as well as respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights will remain essential. She has also made a reference to the assessment by the European Union on the progress made by Sri Lanka on GSP Plus commitments. Accordingly, the European Union will assess the progress made on Sri Lanka's GSP Plus commitments very soon. The report is scheduled to be released towards the latter part of this year or early 2023. She also commended the success in the efforts to introduce and steer policies that will ensure the short and long-term interests of all Sri Lankans and address the devastating efforts of the unprecedented economic downturn, as well as the negotiations with international financial institutions and creditors. Ursula von der Leyen expressed her interest in working closely to strengthen further the ties and cooperation based on commitments to shared values and common interests. In newsmaking headlines tonight, Sri Lanka's former Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris warned that the resolutions being prepared at the UN Human Rights Council would hurt Sri Lanka's efforts on the IMF funds and GSP Plus concessions if it is adopted.
The main allegation would be the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act to violate the rights of the people. It is surprising that the state would use this act at a time when the 51st session of the United Nations Human Rights Council is going on. As the former foreign minister, I made a pledge on behalf of the President and the government of Sri Lanka that this act would not be used until we can introduce a new one. But it was completely violated. On the 6th of October, this will be taken up for debate. If it is adopted, it will hurt our discussion with the IMF and the efforts on the GSP Plus concession. It will also hurt future investments in Sri Lanka.
මේ විදිය දරුණු වාර්තාවක් තිබෙනවා නම් මේ රටට ආයෝජන පැමිණීම ඉතාමත් ගැටලු සහිතයි.
It is reported that the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasantha Mudalige, who is detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, is escorted out of the detention site to a separate area at night. Questions were raised in Parliament on the matter. Vasantha Mudalige, Venerable Siridhamma Thero are detained for 45 days, which is handled according to the law. But the problem here is that Vasantha Mudalige is being taken out of the prison at night to inspect certain premises. You know the old story. Going for a spot check, the man ran away, then shots were fired. So this is a big threat to his life. All I'm asking is, investigate into this matter. No one can obstruct the investigations of those arrested under the PTA. If we take those court orders and inspect the relevant places, neither we nor anyone else can stop them, so we can deal with them at courts. Otherwise, if we are to take those groups to fulfill the justice of the country, we have to take them and carry out the necessary activities according to law. You can conduct investigations, but why should you take them out at night? Do site inspections happen at night? We have also worked with lawyers for 20 years in the court. Everything goes during the day.
The special petition filed challenging the Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill in the Supreme Court will be taken up for further examination on Tuesday. The Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill was included into the Parliament agenda by the government on the 23rd of September.
The examination of the petition took place today in the presence of a 3-member bench comprising of Supreme Court Justices Gamini Abarasekara, Mahinda Samayawardana and Arjun Obesekara. Deputy Solicitor General Kanishka De Silva, who appeared on behalf of the Attorney General, pointed out that the relevant bill is not a draft that overrides the Constitution and that the government is ready to amend it during the committee stages if there are any clauses that are felt to be inconsistent with the Constitution of Sri Lanka. She has further stated that a person will be rehabilitated only on the orders given by the magistrate court and on the consent of the person subject to undergo rehabilitation.
Meanwhile, the opposition raised questions about the bond scams that took place in 2015 and 2016.
Inquiry, the Attorney General has filed cases. The following central bank officials have been named as respondents in at least one of these cases that were filed based on the information given by the Attorney General. Number 1, former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran. Number 2, former Deputy Governor P. Samarasiri. Are there any additional questions?
When we were in
the government faction, they highlighted the bond scam. I remember them saying that they will somehow bring the main culprits behind the central bank bond scam, the former governor, as soon as they come into power.
No matter whose friend is involved in the bond scam, no matter who is in power, that investigation will continue. As a government, we will provide whatever support is required to fast-track that investigation.
Previously, you said that Ranil Wickremesinghe is directly responsible for this. As he is the current president, I believe that those who stole public funds are being protected within their greed for power. Even though you're saying that Ranil Wickremesinghe's name is not involved in this, you mentioned his name continuously. Is it vengeful to brand a person who is not a thief as a thief? Don't you think that you got into power through such allegations conspiratorially?
Honourable MP, I responsibly state such a situation will never arise during the tenure of this government. The President has never expressed such a view during any discussion regarding the matter. I responsibly state that the court has not named Ranil Wickremesinghe as an accused.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් චූදිතෙක් බවට පත් කළා නැහැ ඉස්සෙල්ලාම. ඒ කියන්නේ එතුමාගේ විධායක ජනාධිපති ධූරය ගැන කතා කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා බැලුවොත් ඒක පත් කළා නැහැ මේ පරීක්ෂණ සභාව තුලේ. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයාට මේකේ නම.
Previously you said that Ranil Wickremesinghe is directly responsible for this. As he is the current president, I believe that those who stole public funds are being protected within their greed for power. Even though you're saying that Ranil Wickremesinghe's name is not involved in this, you mentioned his name continuously. Is it vengeful to brand a person who is not a thief as a thief? Don't you think that you got into power through such allegations conspiratorially?
Instead of talking about what didn't happen today, as the government faction, we are ready to provide an answer to that if you join hands with us to provide solutions to the problems faced by the people.
Sri Lanka is really in need of US dollars to ease the forex crisis. Did you know that since 1957, the Sri Lanka Army has been generating foreign exchange to Sri Lanka? If you didn't, here's a look.
Sri Lanka Army, living legends.
Over the years, the United Nations expanded its field operations from traditional missions involving generally observational tasks performed by military personnel to complex, multi-dimensional enterprises. Peacekeeping was primarily limited to maintaining ceasefires and stabilizing situations on the ground, providing crucial support for political efforts to resolve conflict by peaceful means. Sri Lanka banded with the UN peacekeeping force in 1957. However, over the past 2 decades, the demand for Sri Lanka's UN peacekeeping force has grown. Hence, the Institute of Peace Support Operations Training Sri Lanka was born in 2004 near the Kukuleganga. Since 2004, the IPSOTSL produced 20,202 peacekeepers for various overseas missions, and Sri Lanka Army through UN peacekeeping deployments has generated more than $270 million as revenue for the state. In addition to deployment personnel on UN peacekeeping missions, Sri Lanka also generates much needed revenue by deploying the military hardware of the Sri Lanka Army. Sri Lanka Army peacekeepers have been deployed to multiple territories including South Sudan, Central African Republic, Mali, Haiti, Lebanon, Eritrea and Burundi. The most challenging mission for Sri Lankan peacekeepers is in the war-torn nation of Mali. The United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali faces a daunting task of maintaining the peace in the trouble-torn region. 9 Sri Lankan peacekeepers have laid down their lives in Mali and Haiti, while more than 40 have suffered injuries. All of this to maintain world peace. The self-sufficient Sri Lanka Army. Details tomorrow.
Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Navy's latest offshore patrol vessel, originally used by the US Coast Guard, called port in Guam.
Sri Lanka Navy officially took delivery of the ex-United States Coast Guard cutter USCGC Douglas Munro, provided by the United States on the 26th of October 2021. Subsequently, she was designated with the pennant number P627 in SLN fleet and underwent certain modernizations equipped to suit the operational needs of the Sri Lanka Navy. The ship departed from Sri Lanka from the port of Seattle, United States on the 3rd of September 2022. Having covered a long sea voyage of about 5,898 nautical miles in the Pacific Ocean, P627 called at Port Apra in Guam for replenishment on the 2nd of October. During the passage, she is also expected to make port calls at Manila in the Philippines and Changi in Singapore for replenishment and services. Meanwhile, P627 is scheduled to arrive at the port of Colombo in the first week of November 2022.
On to developments on the weather situation in the country. Adverse weather conditions claimed the life of a mother of 3 in Mount Vernon in Dimbulapatana on Monday.
Sri Lanka's central hills were battered by heavy rains, resulting in a mound of earth collapsing onto a kitchen in Mount Vernon, Dimbulapatana on Monday morning. A 46-year-old mother of 3 who was inside the house was buried alive. A major effort got underway to rescue her. Unfortunately, she did not make it out alive. A large tree uprooted in Gaminipura, Hatton and fell onto a house during a heavy downpour that was accompanied by gale winds. The house was badly damaged and a husband-wife duo living in the house were injured. The spill gates of several reservoirs were opened following a heavy downpour. 2 spill gates of the Upper Kotmale Reservoir were opened due to heavy rains. Reports suggested that the water levels of the Vimala Surendra Reservoir had increased and it has almost reached spill level. 2 spill gates of the Mahaveli Dam in Polgolla were opened and each gate is releasing 4,000 cubic feet of water per second to the Lower Victoria Reservoir. The Met Department said that winds will be southwesterly and wind speed will be 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. Wind speed may increase up to 50 to 60 kilometers per hour at times in the sea areas off the coast extending from Galle to Trincomalee via Putlam and Kankasanture. Wind speeds may increase up to 60 to 70 kilometers per hour from Galle to Pothuwil via Hambantota. Showers will occur at times in western, Sabaragamuwa and northwestern provinces and in Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa alleges that those who ruined the country are now trying to pin the blame on public sector officials.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa graced the Habaraduwa electorate Balamandala meeting of the Samagi Jana Balawege on Sunday. The Rajapaksha's mistake is that they are making shadow governments to pin the blame on the public sector officials. We will not accept it. We must protect the public sector as it is a great resource. They say the public sector is of no use. They must speak with the public sector. The public sector is not responsible for the wrongs committed by the Rajapakshas. It is the Rajapakshas who made this country bankrupt. They gave concessions to the billionaires, not the public sector workers.
These were views expressed by leader of the Janata Vimukti Peramana Andhra Kumara Dissanayake at a press conference held on Monday.
I remember his uncle, J.R. Jayawardena, in 1978 said that this country will be made into another Singapore. What the uncle said then is repeated now by the nephew. At that time, the uncle was the president and the nephew was the minister. Now 34 years have passed. The uncle has been president twice and the nephew has held the office of Prime Minister for several times. So nephew reiterating the same thing that the uncle said is such a tragedy. A Singapore dream is not what this country wants, but a dream of making this Sri Lanka a developed country in the world. That is the dream we represent.
Sri Lanka's State Minister of Women and Child Affairs Geeta Kumarasinghe commented on the lifting of taxes on sanitary napkins produced locally.
මේක ඉතාම මහඟු තීරණයක්. මොකද මේක නිසා රුපියල් 50කින් 60කින් විතර අවශ්‍ය පැකට්ටුවක් මිලදී ගන්න කෙනෙකුට පුළුවන් වෙනවා.
ඉදිරියේදී මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මොන හරි සහන ක්‍රමයක යටතේ ගන්න මොකක් හරි එහෙම
මම හිතන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා තානාපතිතුමා.
The Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India, Milinda Moragoda, and the Indian High Commissioner, Gopal Bagle, have joined forces to create a business called Sindhu to make sanitary napkins for women. We have made a request, they have also agreed, and I will conduct further discussions in this regard. This is to make sanitary napkins available at an affordable cost.
පුළුවන් තරම් පාසල් දරුවන්ට මේක තාම අඩු මුදලකට දරුවන්ට මේක ලබා දෙන්න.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ? නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ? හදිස්සියට බාල පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ. නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටා. මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා. හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්.
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජනනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Here's a complete revolution. 25 for 50. Now, LB Finance introduces a high interest rate of 25% for your 50-day fixed deposits. LB Lasa Isaru, an unparalleled reward for a trusted deposit.
Biz Fast.
Litrogas Lanka Limited says a price revision will take place this week.
Litrogas Lanka Limited said that it decided to reduce the prices of domestic gas cylinders with effect from midnight on Wednesday. Litrogas amends its prices on the 5th of every month as per the price formula that was introduced. The previous price revision took place on the 5th of September 2022.
The Colombo Stock Exchange was halted 26 minutes before its official closing time on Monday after one of the indices plunged more than 5%. The S&P SL20 index dropped by over 5% from the previous close as set out in the Securities and Exchange Commission Directive dated 30th of April 2020. The main all-share price index fell 3.8% while more liquid S&P SL20 dropped 4.9% when the market was halted. A university student has gone missing and a police investigation is underway to locate him.
Sri Lanka police received a missing persons complaint over the disappearance of a third-year student of the engineering faculty of the University of Peradeniya. Sri Lanka police said that the University of Peradeniya filed the missing person complaint, citing the student in question was not seen since this morning. The university student was identified as 25-year-old Pulasti Pramudit Pereira from Ganemulla. The University of Peradeniya had informed Sri Lanka police that the student who was living in the university dorms was last seen on Saturday. The Peradeniya police is conducting investigations.
The Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka attended an event in Trincomalee on Sunday. He spoke about rendering support India has given to the people of Sri Lanka.
Dry rations were distributed to low-income households in Trincomalee under an Indian aid.
That India has always stood with the people of Sri Lanka and will always continue to be supportive of the people of Sri Lanka. So the small help that we are giving today is a symbol of the strong support with India and the people of India have always given to the people of Sri Lanka.
The police sergeant who foiled a money heist in Tambuttegama was rewarded on Monday.
Police Sergeant Buddhika Kumara was hailed a hero when he prevented a heist of 22.3 million rupees in Tambuttegama, disregarding his own safety. The police sergeant was invited to the Ministry of Public Security on Monday, where he was recognized for his bravery by the Minister of Public Security, the Inspector General of Police and other senior ranks of Sri Lanka Police. Police Sergeant Buddhika Kumara was promoted to the rank of Sub-Inspector and was awarded a cash prize of 2.5 million rupees.
පොලිසියට මේ වගේ දෙයක් වුණොත් ලොකු ලැජ්ජාවක් අපකීර්තියක් වෙයි කියලා හිතලා ඒක කොහොම හරි වළක්වා ගන්නවා කියන උත්සාහයෙන් අදිෂ්ඨානයෙන් කරා. ඉතින් මම ඒක අවසාන ජය ගත්තා.
Today marked day 29 of the 4th edition of the Divi Savya Social Welfare Program supported by LOLC Holdings.
Day 29 of the 4th edition of the Divi Savya Social Welfare Program took place at the Akkarayam Gramanilladari division of the Karachi Divisional Secretariat in the Kilinochchi district. The objective of the program is to provide nutritious meals for low-income earners in the country. Families that require assistance are identified and the essential relief packs are delivered to them under the Divi Savya Social Welfare Program.
And that's a wrap of your news for tonight. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mariam Gunavijaya. Good night and take care.